The price of silence. The wind whistled through the dry canyons of Dust Vale, carrying the smell of dust, smoke, and forgotten dreams. The town was nothing more than a handful of buildings clinging to the edges of the desert. A saloon, a sheriff's office, a church whose bell hadn't rung in years. Life here was cheap, and debts were paid with pain. In the far end of town stood a weather-beaten barn. Inside, a young woman sat on a broken crate, her wrists trembling in her lap. Her name was Alara May, the daughter of a rancher who had lost everything to gambling and whiskey. The last debt he owed would be paid tonight, and the payment was her. Outside, thunder rolled low and heavy. Rain threatened, but like everything in Dust Vale, it rarely kept its promise. The barn door creaked open, letting in the harsh yellow light of lanterns and the smell of horses. A group of men stepped in, their boots dragging across the dirt floor. At their head was Sheriff Dale, looking more nervous than usual. Behind him walked a tall, quiet man dressed in a long black coat. His hat shadowed half his face, and his presence alone made the others keep their distance. His name was Cole Bennett, though few said aloud. Some called him a gunman, others a drifter, and a few swore he'd once been a soldier in the border wars. Whatever the truth, he spoke little and kept to himself. "Alara May," said the sheriff, clearing his throat. "This here's Mr. Bennett. He's the one who paid off your daddy's debt." Alara lifted her eyes. Her father sat slumped near the back, a bottle in his hand and guilt carved into his face. His shoulders sagged under years of failure. He couldn't even look at her. "How much?" she asked, voice sharp but shaking. "How much was I worth?" No one answered. Cole took a step forward and set a heavy leather pouch on the table beside her father. The coins inside clinked softly. "His debt's cleared," he said, his voice calm but commanding. "He won't be seeing you again." Her father gave a hollow nod, unable to meet his daughter's eyes. Alara stared at him, fury burning through her tears. The man who should have protected her had sold her instead. Cole turned to her. "You're coming with me." She rose slowly, the wooden floor creaking under her boots. "And if I refuse?" she asked. He looked at her with quiet steadiness. "Then I leave you here. But your father already signed the papers. If I walk out, someone worse will come along." The words hit her like a slap. She wanted to scream, to fight, to run, but where could she go? The world outside the barn was just as cruel as the one inside. With trembling hands, she wrapped her shawl tighter around her and followed him into the rain. Outside, lightning split the sky. Cole's horse, a black stallion named Ash, snorted impatiently. He mounted first, then extended a hand to her. She hesitated before taking it, her small fingers brushing his calloused palm. In one smooth motion, he lifted her behind him. She felt the solid strength of him, the warmth radiating from his coat. The ride through the storm was long and silent. The rain lashed against them, soaking her hair and dress. She tried to keep her distance, but every time the wind howled, she found herself clutching the back of his coat for balance. When dawn broke, the world had turned gold. They rode into a valley surrounded by low hills, where a modest ranch waited, a weathered house, a barn, and wide open land stretching to the horizon. Cole dismounted and helped her down. "This is my place," he said simply. "You'll stay here. The cabin by the corral is yours." She looked around, confused. Why are you doing this? What do you want from me?" He met her gaze, his gray eyes unreadable. "Nothing. You're free here." She blinked, stunned. "You bought me just to let me go?" He shrugged, setting his hat aside. "Bought your freedom, not you." Without waiting for a response, he turned toward the barn and began tending to the horses. Alara stood there in the rain, her heart a storm of disbelief. She had been bought but not claimed, saved but not owned. The silence of it unsettled her more than any cruelty could have. That night, she sat by the small window of her new cabin, staring at the vast sky. The stars looked close enough to touch. She thought of her father, of the way his hand had trembled as he passed her away like a debt unpaid. Tears came quietly. For the first time in her life, she cried not from pain, but from confusion. Cole's ranch was quiet. No laughter, no songs, just the rustle of wind through the dry grass. He kept his distance, always polite, always silent. Each morning he rose before dawn to mend fences and break wild horses. Each night he sat by the porch with a tin cup of coffee, watching the horizon like he was waiting for something that never came. Alara tried to keep busy, cooking, cleaning, tending the small garden. But curiosity burned in her. One evening, she finally asked, "Why'd you do it?" she said, standing a few steps behind him as he repaired his saddle under the porch light. He didn't turn. "Do what?" "Buy me. Bring me here. You don't even know me." Cole set the saddle aside, wiped his hands, and finally looked at her. "I knew your mother." She froze. "My mother? But she's gone," he said softly. "But when I was young, she helped me. I was a runaway once, and she gave me food, a place to rest. Never asked for a thing. I never forgot." Alara felt her throat tighten. "So you bought me out of pity?" "No," he said, shaking his head. "Out of respect." She looked down, her hands twisting in her dress. "You didn't have to." "I know," he said quietly. "But someone had to." For a moment, the only sound was the wind moving across the fields. Then she turned and walked back to the cabin, her chest aching with something she didn't understand. Gratitude? Shame? Hope? She couldn't tell. That night, as she lay on a narrow bed, she heard the soft strumming of a guitar from outside. The melody was slow, mournful, the kind of song played for people you can't forget. She crept to the window and saw him sitting by the firelight, head bowed, fingers moving gently across the strings. The flames flickered against his face, revealing a sadness she hadn't seen before. Alara pressed a hand to her heart. The man who had bought her wasn't cruel. He wasn't broken. He was haunted, and though she didn't know it yet, their fates were about to intertwine in a way neither of them could have imagined. The gift he never meant to give. Spring came to Dust Vale like a long-forgotten promise. The hard earth softened, the streams began to sing again, and the once barren fields of Cole Bennett's ranch breathed with color. The days stretched long and golden. For Alara May, it was the first time in her life that each sunrise didn't bring fear. She rose early, fed the hens, cleaned the cabin, and sometimes watched Cole working in the field from afar. There was something about the way he moved, steady, unhurried, like the land itself trusted him. He was still quiet, but his silence no longer frightened her. It soothed her. Weeks turned into months. Alara learned to ride under his watchful eye. Her first attempt ended with her falling face first into the mud. And for the first time, she heard him laugh, a soft, low sound that made her heart trip over itself. "Try loosening your grip," he said, holding the reins out to her again. "The horse can feel your fear." "I'm not afraid," she muttered, cheeks flushed. He raised an eyebrow. "Then prove it." She did, and when she managed to ride halfway across the corral before falling again, Cole clapped once, smiling. "You're getting better." That smile, rare as rain in Dust Vale, stayed with her long after sunset. That evening, Alara made supper, beans, cornbread, and stew. She set 2 plates on the table, then hesitated. For months, they'd eaten apart, him on the porch, her in the cabin. This time, she knocked on the door to his house. Cole opened it, brow furrowed. "Something wrong?" "No," she said quickly. "I just thought you might want to eat with someone for once." He looked at her a long moment, then stepped aside. "Come in." The house smelled faintly of leather and pine. It was tidy but empty, the kind of place that felt lived in but not lived. She set the food on the table and sat across from him. They ate mostly in silence until she asked, "You always been alone out here?" He nodded. "Since the war ended. Couldn't stand the townsfolk much after that. Too much noise, too much pretending." She tilted her head. "Pretending?" He took a slow breath. "That things go back to normal after you've seen them broken." His words hung in the air, heavy as the night outside. Alara reached across the table, almost without thinking, and placed her hand on his. "You fix things here, Cole. Maybe not for yourself, but for me. That's something." He looked at her, really looked at her for the first time. In that quiet, something passed between them that neither dared to name. But peace in Dust Vale never lasted. 2 weeks later, the sound of horses echoed across the plains. Cole stood on the porch as 5 riders approached, their silhouettes cutting through the sunset. At their lead rode a man Cole had hoped to never see again, Mac May, Alara's father. He looked worse than before, thinner, eyes bloodshot, skin drawn tight over bone. But there was still fire in his voice when he shouted, "You think you could just take what's mine, Bennett?" Cole's jaw tightened. "She's not yours, Mac. You sold her. I paid your debt. That don't mean you can keep her." Mac spat. "She's my blood." Alara stepped outside then, pale and shaking. "Pa, please. Stay out of this, girl," he barked, his eyes wild. "You're coming with me, you hear? Ain't no man owns my kin." "She's not owned," Cole said firmly, stepping forward. "She's free. You gave that up the day you signed her name." The men behind Mac shifted uneasily. They weren't here for her. They were here for trouble. "Walk away, Mac," Cole warned, "before you make this worse." Mac's hand twitched toward his holster. Alara gasped. "Pa, don't." But the world moved faster than her voice. A flash, a thunderclap, smoke. For a heartbeat, Alara thought Cole had been hit. But it was Mac's gun that flew from his hand, landing in the dirt. Cole's revolver was already back in its holster. "I ain't warning you again," he said quietly. Her father clutched his bleeding hand, cursing. "You'll pay for this, Bennett. You think you can hide her forever." "I'm not hiding her," Cole said. "She's right where she wants to be." Mac glared at his daughter. "You'd choose him? After everything I've done for you?" Alara's eyes filled with tears. "You didn't do it for me. You did it for yourself." For a moment, something flickered in the old man's face. Shame, maybe. Then it was gone. He turned and mounted his horse, spitting into the dust. "You'll regret this, girl." And then he was gone, swallowed by the horizon. That night, the ranch was silent. Alara sat by the window, staring at the stars. Cole stood outside, motionless, his shadow long against the barn. She opened the door quietly and stepped out. He didn't turn when she said, "You didn't have to protect me again." "I did," he murmured, "because I couldn't protect the last person who needed me." Alara frowned. "Who was she?" He exhaled, the sound almost like a sigh. "My wife. Lost her during the war. I came back too late." She felt her heart twist. "So that's why you live alone. Some debts can't be paid," he said softly. "So you stopped trying?" Alara stepped closer, her eyes glistening. "You've done more for me than anyone ever has. You gave me freedom, but you gave me something else too." He turned, brow furrowed. "What's that?" "A reason to live without fear." For a long moment, neither spoke. The wind shifted, carrying the scent of rain. She reached out and took his hand, rough, scarred, but steady. He didn't pull away. When morning came, the light fell golden across the fields. Alara worked beside him, helping mend a fence, laughing when her fingers got caught in the wire. He watched her, a faint smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. In the distance, the town bell rang, for the first time in years. It was as if Dust Vale itself had woken from a long sleep. Cole looked out over the land, the sky stretching wide and endless. For the first time in a long while, the silence didn't feel empty. It felt like home. Alara brushed a strand of hair from her face, looked at him, and said quietly, "You offer me freedom, Cole, but you gave me something more." He tilted his head. "And what's that?" She smiled softly. "A place to belong." He didn't answer, just nodded once, his gray eyes warm with something unspoken. Epilogue. Years later, travelers passing through Dust Vale spoke of the ranch at the valley's edge, the one owned by a quiet cowboy and the woman who once was sold to settle a debt. They said he offered her a home. He offered her peace. And, without ever saying the words, he offered her love, the kind that asked for nothing and gave everything. And beneath the wide, wild western sky, their story lived on, proof that even in a world built on debts and silence, kindness could still change a life forever.